Hey, good morning and happy Wednesday, happy hump day. This is the Chicago Smart Podcast. This is your host, David. I'm coming to you guys this morning with a quick little podcast. I don't know how long this is going to go, but I wanted to just throw my 2 cents in really quick on a few subjects that are going on in the sports world, not only in Chicago, but across different teams and nationally different teams in both the NBA and Major League Baseball. Notice that I did say Major League Baseball and the NBA. Unless something breaks or something that is of significance in the NFL, I will not be talking about the NFL. Now, if you guys remember in my first episode, my pilot episode, I kind of was a little adamant or harsh about how much, in Chicago specifically, again, I don't know about any other markets, how much you talk about football after the Super Bowl. Now, I know that after the Super Bowl, there's that time period where, you know, coaches make decisions to go other places, even during the playoffs. Like if their team gets eliminated early, then they can take more interviews to interview with other teams. Much like Ben Johnson when he got hired here with the Bears, it was after the Detroit Lions made that exit from the playoffs. So again, yeah, there'll be coaching changes, there'll be coaching additions. People might sign as free agents, but again, that doesn't happen all that often. More what that time period is talking about the draft, the upcoming draft that'll be happening in about I think April, and I could have that wrong. Um, but I did notice that there's been a lot of talk specifically on the Chicago sports radio stations here in Chicago, 1000 and 670. There's a lot of still Bears talk. There's still a lot of football talk. And I'm like, again, like I said before, do you have to cover that time, whether it's 7 to 10 or 9 to 1 or whatever that time slot that these hosts have? They have to talk about something. They can't just sit there on dead air. I understand that. That is understandable. But it's almost like they're grasping at straws. I'll say that if I'm even saying that phrase correctly, right? They're kind of in that loop where they're the baseball's in spring training, but there's not a lot to talk about other than when they broadcast the games. They may talk about, hey man, this guy looked really good today. Hopefully he maintains him being hot in spring training and that carries over to the regular season. Um, you know, things like that. There's not really much to talk about. Like I said, even when they're doing training camp with football, what's there to talk about? There's a lot of guys that are still working on pitches, so you're going to see guys maybe that otherwise wouldn't hit a home run because there's a pitcher that's maybe working on a new pitch, and that's the best place to work on that pitch, right? Work on it through testing it and see if that pitch works. If they need to put different spin on it, if they need to put a different grip on the ball, whatever it is, right? They're working on things through spring training because they haven't thrown a baseball in a long while. Even if they're trying to ramp up in December or even January before spring training starts in February, um, they haven't really thrown it competitively. They've just been throwing it, whether it's some place in a complex that they maybe live near where they go to train. A lot of these guys sometimes go ramp up in December, January in Arizona and other places that are warm to try to get ready for the season. But again, going back to what I was originally talking about, the NFL is just again to me, it doesn't appeal to me. And it may appeal to somebody else, and that's all. That's all great. That's all fine and dandy. And if there's something on that radio program that appeals to you as you're driving to work or you're driving your kids to school, or if you listen to it on the Odyssey app, like sometimes I listen to, I'll go back because I can't listen through it throughout work. I might have my own meeting, so I can't really listen to these stations throughout the day. So I'll go through the Odyssey app and listen to different programs, and then they break it down into segments. What segments were on, and I can just click it and listen to that for that segment, which is great. Which I recommend the Odyssey app. No, I am not sponsored by Odyssey. But again, it is something that I recommend to you guys if you guys want to listen to any of these programs, specifically on 670 The Score. I don't know if they have ESPN 1000 on there, but 670 The Score does through the Odyssey app, or programs will be on there. Even if you've missed a segment, you can always go back and listen to it, um, which is where I get most of my information about this. A lot of the topics are about Ben Johnson and the Bears and other NFL topics, and it doesn't appeal to me because it's just like we're in the middle of baseball season starting, and I feel like we can give this a little bit more attention, and they are, right? They are. They're giving it more attention as far as covering it, and they're covering it for different angles. But again, it's a lot of football talk, and I'm kind of just waiting for that to die down for the games to start up. So maybe they have something else to talk about other than football because I don't know how much more you can talk about the upcoming season and hopes and all these aspirations and these predictions, and that's great. And I hope that they have a fantastic season. I hope that whatever happens with the Cubs, that if it just doesn't work out and by September they're out of it already, or in September they're making a run, but you see that hey, they'll make a little mini run, but they're going to run into sort of a brick wall, and then kind of football can kind of take that place on every Sunday. That would be great. That would be fantastic. I would love for them to have just this fantastic season and hear nothing but positives that come out of there. I don't know, right? I'm hoping for the best, but at this point, I'm kind of just I'm football overloaded at this point. Like even though it's not my favorite sport and I do still follow it, I'm just football overloaded. I'm overloaded on football, and I'm kind of just tired to talk about it. And then there's two schools now in baseball, right? So shifting over to baseball, there's two schools of thought in baseball, at least in the last 2 weeks since I last recorded a podcast. Was Alex Bregman finally made a decision. He decided to sign with the Red Sox, which is, again, if you guys don't know, it's my second favorite team besides the Cubs. So it goes Cubbies and then Red Sox. And I think I explained that on the pilot. It was because when I was a little kid, my dad told me that those were the two teams that were supposedly had a curse and had not won a championship, and they had this drought for a long time. And sort of explained the history as much as he could to me to a 6 year old for me to understand what that meant. I'm happy that he got what he thought was fair to him, and his agent thought was fair to him, and that's great. I never get upset when a player gets money that they feel that's deserved to them. If they can get it and the team is willing to pay, then that is up to that team, right? And up to that player to try to, I wouldn't say live up to that contract, but try to play it to the best ability to prove all the other teams that didn't vie for him to say, hey, you see, this is what you missed, right? Even if it's just 1 year production and then they just fall off depending on how long the contract is, and that's a different conversation, right? But to kind of say, hey, you see, this is what you guys were missing for not signing me. There was two schools of thought. There was a school of thought of, you know what, that's too much for Alex Bregman based on his numbers, right? Based on his stats, that's too much for Alex Bregman. I feel like the Boston Red Sox overpaid. The other second school of thought was, man, the Cubs are so cheap. They underpaid him. They offered him a little bit less than everybody else. In fact, they were the third or fourth best offer that he probably had. Or I'm sorry, take that back, third, because obviously the best was the Red Sox because that's who he went with. The Detroit Tigers were the second, the Cubs being the third. And it got back to the conversation of, well, the Cubs are cheap. Well, I'm in the school of thought is if they would have gotten him, great. If they don't get him, great. There's nothing we could do about it. As far as what they were willing to pay, that's a different subject, right? That is a very, very different subject. It looks like Jed lowballed him. At the end of the day, Jed did not lowball him. Jed made the offer that he was authorized to make. But what do you mean authorized? The Ricketts, at the end of the day, he had to meet with them, like I said before, and ask the Ricketts, hey, this is what I think we should offer him, but I would like to offer him this much more. I don't know what that conversation looked like. We'll probably never know what that conversation looked like. It may happen after Jed is gone, whether this is his last year or he decides that, you know, he wants to step away or whatever, however they want to call it. Again, right now he's on his last year. I don't know what's going to happen. We have an entire season to discuss what's going to happen with Jed and what happens with Jed, right? But at the end of the day, he met with Tom, he met with Laura, and he met with, I think, with the other brother, and I can never remember the other brother's name, so I apologize. But the three Ricketts, I didn't know that. I know that they have ownership of the team as the right as kids, as the family, right? But I didn't know that he had to present to Tom and his siblings. I didn't know that. I thought he was only presenting to Tom. Now, I'm not saying that Tom was not for it and the other two siblings were. I don't know that. I wasn't in the room and that's not been reported. So I can't give you guys something that's not there. I'm just giving you a what if scenario, right? The two others are there because they're owners of the team and they're more just there to just as a service to listen. And Tom's ultimately that final word, right? At the end of the day, I don't want to hear Tom cry poor anymore, right? Because that money that they didn't use for Alex Bregman, maybe they want to use it somewhere else later in the season. And now they're saying, well, there's just two schools of thought. So it's like, I don't know what school to really agree with because I haven't seen Alex Bregman do anything yet, right? We can't go off of the stats of the last year because, again, that's how they base it. And again, they have nothing to base it on. They can't base it on future projections, right? The guy may find his stroke in Boston because it's a different situation than Houston. It's a different environment. Sometimes guys just hit better in different environments when they switch teams. It's happened before. It's not out of the realm of possibility, right? But at the end of the day, it's going to tie this back to what I said in the beginning with the NFL and specifically the Bears. And how am I going to tie this together? Let me tell you how I'm going to tie this together about Tom being cheap and people crying, hey, how can we decide him? How can we decide him? Let's talk about the reality of it. Whether Tom signed Alex Bregman and kept him for however long he pitched him for, right? I think it might have been 4 years, 3 or 4 years, right? Because I know the Red Sox gave him 4 years, right? They have Kyle Tucker right now for a year. Kyle Tucker's going to look for a big monster deal that a lot of people think that Tom's not going to give him, right? He's looking for at least $500 million. At least that's what they're saying. Again, if he has a down season this year, I don't know if he can still ask for that. But again, I don't know, right? Let me tie this all back. Let me come back. I'm going, here on into the weeds. Doesn't matter who he signs. At the end of the day, there's still those group of fans that they can have hot trash in the middle of that field, right? And this is no disrespect to the current team now. They could have not that team. They could have put the same team they had out there last year, not gotten Kyle Tucker, whatever, right? Kept Belly, traded Belly, whatever, right? People are still going to show up to the game because people are loyal to the Cubs. People are loyal to that team. People are loyal to that stadium. People are loyal to that neighborhood because it's just a giant party, right? Win or lose, there's a giant party and there happens to be a game in the middle of that giant party. People will pay because supposedly it's the greatest experience in baseball. They're paying a lot of money, which I've talked about before. I'm not going to go into that. How this ties to the Bears is the Bears raised their season tickets by 10%, and I could have that wrong. I think it's 10 to 12%. I didn't take a note of that. But I'm listening to this conversation on the radio, and David Hall, who's with Mully, who does his show in the morning, with Mully in the morning on 6-7 The Score, was not too happy about them raising the prices because of the last couple of seasons they've had. He says it might be justified if they're, say, the Detroit Lions, or they're another team that's consistently been there in that conversation for contention in the playoffs, right? All this conversation that's been had about, these teams on the come up, your Commanders, your Lions, people like that have made a really big, push, that they've made a big push, then maybe you can see, hey, there might be a little bit more demand because this team is really on that cusp, or it looks good. Let's see if, Daniels and the Commanders quarterback can have that second good season. So maybe the Commanders will raise their prices. I don't know if they have or they're going to, right? He's upset about it. He's stating why. Mully is then the counterpoint. And again, his counterpoint was, which wasn't a bad counterpoint, even though I disagree with it, Mully's counterpoint was, those tickets are hard to come by, and it's the law of supply and demand, right? Their demand is there, so they know that the demand is there. They can raise those prices. Hall said, well, they shouldn't raise those prices. They should either keep them the same or maybe just lower them just a little bit, right? The season tickets, because you don't know what you're going to get yet. But then he called it, which I thought was great. And I'm not going to coin this phrase because that phrase was coined by him, and I love it because I'm going to keep stating it every week. It's the Ben Johnson tax. And what is the Ben Johnson tax? They are charging you because they brought Ben Johnson in, who they have to pay, but they're also paying other coaches that they fired. Eberflus, they still have to pay Eberflus. They still have to pay Waldron, Shane Waldron. They still have to pay him. It's not like they're fired, they're off the books. So that's that Ben Johnson tax. And they're just going to hide it as, hey, this is the next, this is the next phase. Now we're really going to take it because now we have Ben Johnson. We're going to take it, right? Boom. So now they're charging you what I call the Ben Johnson tax, or what Hall called the Ben Johnson tax. Right after he finishes making his point, they take a caller. What does this caller do? The exact same thing I told you guys on that first pilot episode. He's going to get on and sound like a complete bonehead and says, well, yeah, I agree with Mully because it's the law of supply and demand, and you're a little short-sighted. And I'm paraphrasing because maybe he didn't say that, but basically that was his point. He was telling Hall that he was a little short-sighted because guess what? He doesn't care how much tickets go. He's going to buy them because he's a loyal Bears fan and he's going to be there. Well, that's exactly who they want. They want those loyal Bears fans. They don't want what happened last year when the Bears were getting smoked by the Lions, that all the Bears fans left, and there was more Lions fans in the stands than Bears fans, and you were hearing, let's go Lions. The McCaskies don't want that. Not especially this year coming up when they're going to sell you, like I said, a 40-year anniversary of the 85 Bears. They don't want that because now they're going to then put that out there plus their new toy Ben Johnson and hoping that Ben Johnson can work with Caleb Williams. Going back to the Cubs, no matter what, people are going to pay through the nose. Okay? And I am guilty of being a loyal Cubs fan, but I have for years wanted season tickets, but one, can't afford them. That's one, right? Two, I don't feel like I should look for a way to even buy a 8-game, plan or a 10 or a 15 or a 20. I know they're offering small little game plans because I haven't seen them put the effort that I feel that they should put forward, right? I'm going to watch them right here. I am guilty of going to wake up on March 18th at 5 a.m. to watch a game in Tokyo on my recliner before anybody else in my house is up, right? Before the kids get up for school, before my wife gets up for work, I'm going to be sitting on my recliner with my Cubs jersey on, my Cubs hat, watching the Cubs and the Dodgers playing in Tokyo because it's going to be broadcast live on Fox. I am guilty of that. I love them. I will watch them. But I'm not going to sit here and BS you guys and lie to you guys the entire season. If they're doing good, you're going to hear me very happy and very positive and saying, wow, and give you guys all the positives. But if I see garbage, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be very, very frank and very, very honest with you guys. All right? Just because I love a team and because I'm loyal to a team, that means I can't be negative or I can't say anything against that team. That's what they want. They want everybody to come in there, whether it's the Bears or whether it's the Cubs, and we're talking about baseball, just talking about the Cubs. They want you to be loyal. I'm not even going to talk about the other team in town because right now they're floating this dream, and the radio guys are buying it hook, line, and sinker. And I did not commit the man's name to memory. He wanted to buy a majority stake in the Twins. He decided he did not want to do that because he wants to buy more stake into the Sox. He is a minority owner of the Sox. He wants to buy more. So since this guy's a billionaire, now everybody is seeing stars. Oh my goodness. If he could be the savior to buy the team, he's a billionaire. He's going to bring everybody in. And this and this and that. And here's AJ Przinsky taking his little shots at the Cubs. Oh yeah, because if this guy comes in, they can be what the Cubs should be in the Central. This should be juggernaut. First of all, AJ Przinsky, I like you. I love that you are so honest. I love that you are so raw sometimes on your podcast that you have on YouTube. I think that's great. That's awesome. But the little shots at the Cubs, that gets old. I get it. You're trolling. It happens. You're trolling. But it gets a little old because now you're selling a pipe dream for a team you're always talking trash about. So now you'll get on the bandwagon, right? Because now if they buy this billionaire, they're going to be a juggernaut. No, not necessarily. That doesn't mean because they're a billionaire, he's going to throw money. He still has to adhere to the rules of the MLB, right? Of what that could be. There could also be a cap coming. Also, too, just because he's a billionaire, has he told you if I'm going to buy more majority stake in the team, or if he becomes the owner, if Jerry Reinsdorf decides to sell to this gentleman, what do you think is going to happen? I think he's just going to go ahead and he's going to turn the team over overnight? Or what do you think? You don't think he'll put the money in his pocket, right? Because we have somebody across town named Tom Ricketts who may not be a billionaire, but he sure as heck got a lot of real estate around that ballpark. Because when you look around there, it's turning into Ricketts land. From the hotel to which I didn't know. Those places across the street. Now, I'd have to confirm that. I'd have to get some more evidence on that. But the places across the street, there's a Rally's. There's a, what is it? Rally House. Not Rally's. Rally House. There's a bowling alley and there's a movie theater there across the street from the park. Next to the sports world. Right? I'm told that he owns that or he has some sort of stake in that. I know he bought out the rooftops. I know he's bought a lot of land around there. So those lands were not cheap to buy, and they're also not cheap to own. So if that's going in his pocket, there should be no reason he shouldn't be competitive every year. He shouldn't be crying to break even. Because there's teams that are not worried about breaking even or breaking that luxury tax and getting a penalty. And I know that that's part of business, and I'm talking about it from the aspect of a fan. I love my Cubs. Like I said, I'll be there at 5 a.m. on March 18th to watch that game on the TV because I can't wait to see it. That's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Hopefully they win. The game does count, and it's not an exhibition game. As weird as it is, this Tokyo series, the 2 games that they're going to play against the Dodgers in Tokyo, they do count. Then they go back to spring training, which is kind of weird. That's another subject. But it's loyalty. It's always about loyalty, and that's great. But how far does your loyalty go, right? If you were investing in, say, a company, and the company is not giving you what you think is worth for your investment, you'd leave, right? You would leave that company, and not so much leave the company, but you would stop investing in the company, right? If for example, your partner gave you less than what you give them, you give them all, you give them everything you have, they're giving you less than what you think is due to you as a partner, you're going to have a conversation with that partner. You're going to wonder why, right? Whether it be in business, whether it be in personal. So why are we settling for the least and not demanding more, right? The man refuses to talk to the media because they took his soundbite, which it wasn't a soundbite, it was what he said. Nobody made this up. This wasn't AI. He says, we're just looking to break even. They took that and they ran with that. And if some people, it left a sour taste in his mouth. I am one of those some people. It left a sour taste in my mouth because I know that these things are not cheap. Your Cubs convention is not cheap. Your season tickets are not cheap. Even if I buy a single game ticket, they're not cheap, right? You cannot keep crying, poor, 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 when people see that you got money all over the place. That's the same thing with the Bears. They want to build this stadium, but the stadium is going to come out of the taxpayers' pocket, right? In the state of Illinois right now, where, again, I said I wouldn't talk about anything political, but I'm going to just deviate just 1 second from that, just to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart. I have people in my family who are teachers, right? And are in the educational system, friends as well, other than family members. I have a cousin who's a teacher in the Chicago Public Schools. You're going to turn around and tell the state of Illinois that I want a stadium for my team that hasn't made a Super Bowl in almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in 2006. So next year, right? That 2006, 2017, that made the Super Bowl against the Colts. After that, they hadn't made the Super Bowl in 20 years before that. So a team that you're trying to basically take a history that is very rich, it is a charter franchise, but we need your money in order for us to build this stadium, whether we rebuild it on the land we have now, that's owned by the Chicago Park District, or we have a land in Arlington Heights that they bought. You're going to ask the state of Illinois to back you up and to give you these dollars to give you a stadium when the state of Illinois is already suffering with these teachers not having enough salary to teach our children and not having enough salary to even bring supplies into the building, that they have to use their own money to sometimes even bring in supplies, whether it be extra papers, extra pencils, whatever it is, right? Kids, they have this thing where they ask you for extra stuff at the beginning of the year. I know at least for my kids they do extra pencils, pens, whatever, right? They're gonna use all these and they're gonna, ration them and use them for the other kids, right? Which is perfectly fine, right? Everybody donates or gives at the beginning of the year their supplies, and the kids use them throughout the year in case any of their crayons break, glue, what have you, right? We got a really big problem here, right? Where if we stop giving our loyalty, maybe that message will be sent. Maybe there should be more games like that where there's more fans of the opposite team that come into our stadium and are cheering for that team and not yours. So to prove the point that we're done accepting the excuses, we're done accepting that what you put out there is just good enough, and we're going to sell you the dream. We're going to sell you the hope. That's any team in town. That's the Bulls. That's the Blackhawks. That's the Bears. That's the White Sox. That's the Cubs, right? Stop letting these people tell you that they're poor, but then turn around and say, well, the economy's not good, but I'm going to ask you for more money for you to come into my stadium or my field for this experience that I'm selling you, right? And understand that a lot of the times you may come with your buddies or you may take your family to the game. Whatever sport we're talking about here, the experience is expensive. Let's just be honest, right? The experience is expensive, and I'm tired of hearing about, well, we made a competitive offer. No, you didn't. You made the offer that best suited you. without really breaking the bank, or you can break even. I don't understand how a team that has such a rich history, like all these teams here, that's shown that when the team is really good, that loyalty is through the roof. They'll buy toilet paper with the team's name on it if they had to. For goodness sakes, when the Cubs were on that run, Jewel was selling a cereal with Anthony Rizzo's name and face on it that were called Rizzos. I had a box. I bought 2 boxes. I ate all the cereals. My kids were basically just Cheerios. That's all they were. They were just Cheerios with the nice fancy box of Rizzo in it. I still have the box. The cereal's not in it anymore. I ate the cereal. That would be very old stale cereal, but I still have the box in my basement of Rizzo's. Everybody went out to their local Jewel to go buy a box of Rizzo's. They'll buy cereal with your team's best player on it because your team is so good and because that loyalty is there. They will buy anything you are selling them. But you have to stop buying the crap and garbage they sell you. Because if they're selling you crap and garbage, they have no incentive to want to fix the team. They can cry all they want that they're competitive. That is not competitive, right? And I'm not talking about they go spend out like the Mets and the Dodgers. There's a way to be still competitive and not break the bank. There has to be a way. There has to be a way. Because before we know it, it's going to become the has and the have not. If you're just going to cry, and say until they sell a salary cap or they set up a salary floor, we're never going to be able to compete, then that then has a built-in excuse for all the other teams because I don't see Philadelphia crying for it. I don't see Atlanta crying for it. I don't see all these other teams crying, saying that the big bad Dodgers, bad, as I spank my hand right here, right? Bad Dodgers. Yeah, it sucks that they can outbid everybody because of the massive TV contract they have. But that's going to stop you. That's going to tell you I'm not even getting in the race. And they're going to sell you this garbage that they sell you every year. Stop it. I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear about it. Let's just talk about it, right? Let's just talk about it. Us as fans, we are the voice. Even though we're not season ticket holders, we are the voice. If they start seeing those ratings go down, as far as the TV, if you're not okay with it, don't watch them. If you're not okay with it, don't set foot in the stadium. If you're not okay with it, don't set foot on the field, right? No matter what sport we're talking about, right? And I feel like I'm going to keep talking about this all year until I actually see some sort of change. They can fire Jed Hoyer at the end of the year, but if Tom Ricketts doesn't change, you can bring in whoever you want to bring in, and that person is not going to be able to do anything more than what Jed Hoyer could do. Because if you only have so much to go buy something at the store, I don't care if I send my little one or if I send my oldest one. If I send my neighbor, if I send somebody else. If I'm giving them X amount of dollars, they're going to bring me back what X amount of dollars can bring you back from the store. So it doesn't matter. Stop telling me that Jed did this and Jed did that. I get that Jed's made a lot of mistakes, but he's actually had a lot of more good. He's had a lot more good that he's done than bad. Because you got to remember, he's under the constraints of the owner, just like all these other GMs and presidents of baseball operations are. They're under the constraints of the owner. The owner doesn't say to spend, he can't spend. He can't open his wallet. That wallet has to be opened by that owner of that team. Simple as that. Simple as that. And speaking about dollars, I want to then shift to my next topic. There was an article recently about Anthony Rizzo saying that they're trying to give him the league minimum, or at least if he wants to continue to play, he would have to accept the league minimum. Right now, he's a free agent. He's had a couple of down years. But I wanted to actually break into the numbers, and this time I actually brought receipts. And I'm not saying that he was replaced by Paul Goldschmidt. That's who's playing first base now for the Yankees. So technically, yes, he's Rizzo's replacement, right? Technically, we'll say. It wasn't like, it was like they traded for him. It just, that's who the free agent that they brought in, right? So I decided to just dig into the numbers a little bit for both of them, right? So, last year, Paul Goldschmidt played 154 games. He batted 245. He had 22 home runs with 65 RBIs versus Rizzo. Rizzo had 92 games. He played 92 games. He batted 228, had 8 home runs, which were super low for him, and 35 RBIs, which I'm guessing are also super low for him as well. Now, Paul Goldschmidt played 154 games compared to 92. And you're like, well, what happened with Anthony Rizzo last year? Anthony Rizzo last year had 2 significant injuries. He broke his arm back in, I want to say, June. in a game with the Red Sox. He broke his arm. So he was out for quite a bit. He came back in September. It was either June or July, so he came back in September. In September, he got some fingers broken by a pitch that hit his hand. He came back and he was in for about 3 weeks when he had that injury to his hand where he broke his fingers. So that's where the 92 games comes into. And again, with the broken arm, it's not like you can really rehab that, in the sense that you have to let the arm heal before you go out there and try to pick up a bat, right? Broken fingers, same thing. Not making excuses, not saying that Anthony Rizzo deserves to get the $12.5 million that Goldie got this year. Goldie's on a contract with the Yankees for 1 year, $12.5 million, based on his numbers from last year. And the year before, he had similar numbers. But again, this is not an argument of do I think that $12.5 million should have went to Rizzo for 1 year or that Goldie doesn't deserve it, right? Goldschmidt doesn't deserve it. I'm simply saying that if the league looks at these two players and compares them, says, well, of course, they got the better player. Did they? Because again, I got to see a lot of Paul Goldschmidt last year because he played for the Cardinals in the last couple of years. Now, I'm not saying that Paul Goldschmidt can't have a breakout year with the Yankees. Anything is possible, right? And make that $12.5 million look like a steal. But the fact of the matter is that Paul Goldschmidt's older, or getting older, I should say. Let me rephrase that. He is getting older. His numbers are going down. This is not a bad deal for Paul Goldschmidt, especially if he gives you the production that you think he could give you, right? This is not a versus. I'm not trying to say Rizzo versus Goldie. I just wanted to provide you guys the numbers. I saw this guy play. He is not the same Paul Goldschmidt that was in Arizona. He is not the same. Now, whether you get the production from him that you think you can get, and he could be a contributor, that remains to be seen. All I'm simply saying is that this is a very, very tough business. That's why a lot of these guys will go and try to get the maximum amount of dollars they can possibly get from these teams when they can, when their skills are still there. Because when they get older, you have to play for the league minimum. You have to settle coming in with incentive-laden contracts where they say, hey, you'll make this much if you hit these benchmarks, if you play for X amount of games, if you hit this many home runs or RBIs, whatever, any incentive they can throw in there to raise that salary. Now, again, this is me coming from a guy who absolutely adored Anthony Rizzo when he was here with the Cubs. Loved him. He was one of my favorite players, one of my absolute favorites. But the fact of the matter is that they're going to go back and somebody's going to go back and look at his stats and be like, he's on the decline. It's over for him, right? That's not the point. The point is that sometimes we don't look at it from the business side or the team side of it. We look at it from the player side, but like, that player's on the decline. Well, the reason that the guys had such bad numbers, speaking of Anthony Rizzo, is because the year before, the man had a concussion that went undiagnosed. Yes, he passed the MLB concussion protocol, but his team should have known that he wasn't right based on how he looked. And again, him being these tough guys that they're supposed to be wouldn't tell him that he was still having fogginess, that he felt like it was like almost like he had a hangover. He was having fogginess. So maybe you should have said something. That's on Rizzo. But again, the team should have known that something was off when his numbers weren't where they were supposed to be, right? I don't know what the concussion protocol looks like, but I feel like the Yankees sort of dropped the ball on that, right? And I'll say that about anybody. Got nothing to do with Rizzo. It could have been any player on that team. Him coming back from those type of injuries, no matter of age, it's going to be hard for you to get back into the game when you've got a broken arm, you haven't taken a swing, right? I'm not saying that the man should have gotten banked this year, but for them to go that route, again, these experts to go that route to say, hey, well, what does he want? He's being selfish, right? Even fans, oh, he's being selfish, right? He should have just took the offer the Cubs offered him before he left and decided to gamble on himself, right? Well, he thought he was worth more. But I think there's more to that story than that. I think he was tired of seeing his team not wanting to compete, seeing that they went to the World Series and then saying, well, that's it, we're just going to lay back. Maybe he felt like he could have gotten more and that there should have been more expectations from the team, right? That'll all come out eventually one day when he's gone from the game and maybe he could talk a little more freely about it. But the fact that there's experts that are saying that he's being selfish, no, he's not being selfish. Let's really dig into the numbers. Why are those numbers that low? Is it age? That's a possibility. Or maybe it's those injuries. I don't know what a concussion looks like because I've never had a concussion. Even when you are past it, how long does it really take for you to get back? Sometimes it's a mental game. It's between the ears. And I'm not saying because the concussion happens in the brain. No, I'm talking about sometimes your confidence just not there because you feel like I don't have it, or man, I don't feel like myself. Did this concussion affect me more? Broken arm, right? It's not like you can really do much with this broken arm. Not much you can really do with the fingers, right? I don't know how well you can hold a bat when you have broken fingers. There's been guys that have had, you know, fractures and they can put like something on their finger to kind of just maybe help like a cushion. I don't know what that feels like. So I can't judge it from that. But sometimes I, as a fan, find it really funny that there's people that have never played the game and want to tell me that based on his numbers, the Yankees got a better player. We don't know that yet. We don't know that yet. His numbers could diminish. To be honest with you, if Goldie goes above, and I'm not talking about games, right? Because his game's always consistent. He's been pretty consistent as far as like games he'll play, right? 154 to 162, that's fantastic. But 245, 22 home runs, 65 RBIs, his stats last year. If he hits above 245, I would be surprised. If he hits more than 22, I'd be surprised. If he hits above 65 RBIs, I'd be surprised. I see his numbers going down this year. If I'm wrong, I'll come on here at the end of the year and be like, you know what? Man, I way underestimated him. Not to say that if Rizzo was in that position, Rizzo would go over that. I don't know what Rizzo's going to provide. I don't even know if Rizzo's even going to play this year, right? Some team may just bring him in, and he may just have to just swallow his pride and take that league minimum and maybe say, hey, maybe we could put in an incentive late in contract, or maybe I can get those numbers and maybe get those numbers enough where I can get traded to a contender. I don't know, right? Who's really in need of a veteran first baseman? Some say the Cubs would have, but that one has already been filled by Justin Turner, right? We don't know what Justin Turner's going to give us, right? We don't know because he's going to swap a little bit with Bush at first. They're going to maybe play that position a little bit and maybe give Bush some days off if Bush doesn't look good. I don't know how much 30 he's going to play, right? I know that was his position back in the day. I don't know how much 30 he's going to play. How much DH is he going to play? I don't know where he's going to fit into that lineup, right? But it's really tough to hear things like that being said by these experts on the TV and fans. Just when I read their comments throughout social media, that he's just this millennial. That's how they refer to him. Listen to how these millennials talk like he's entitled. Why is he not entitled? Why is he not entitled to have a good opinion of himself? To say, hey, I feel like I'm better than this, right? What is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? There is nothing wrong with saying, I think that I am worth more as a player. There is nothing wrong with that, right? Again, let me put it to you in a different perspective. And I don't dislike this guy at all because I've never heard anything negative about him, right? Let me ask you this. Would you have that same argument, or will those people have that same argument, that same statement, if I was telling you that Shohei Ohtani, if the Angels were willing to pay him the $700 million that the Dodgers gave him, would he have stood? Or would he have said, no, I don't want to play for the Angels because the Angels don't do anything to want to make us contenders and, boost the team. It's not about the money. I just want to go play for a contender but also get paid, right? I'm not saying that happened. I don't even know what the Angels even offered him, right? Or to say, what Chicago offering? Because I know the Cubs were in the conversation, right? Or even they pitched him with something, right? For him to say, well, I want to go play for this, historic franchise. Not that the Dodgers are not their historic franchise, but to play for a historic franchise like the Cubs. Maybe he didn't want to play in the cold because it does tend to be cold here even in April and May. Sometimes it doesn't warm up until like the middle of June. It's Chicago for you, right? You never know. I get that. Or even Toronto, right? Because that was another rumored team. They play in the dome. Maybe they didn't want to play in the dome. Again, obviously they're not going to play all their games in the dome. They travel to different National League and American League stadiums. I don't know. The Dodgers maybe just made sense for them because, from what I understand, the flight from LA to Tokyo there's no connecting flight. It's just straight, as I understand it. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. That was something. Familiarity with California. I haven't already been in California his entire MLB years. I don't know that. But for him to say that he was selfish because he took more money to go play someplace he really wanted to play versus more money to stay where he was at, that's not for me to say, right? Sometimes these players sometimes don't even want to play for some of these teams, not because they're not winners. That's probably a factor, but also because they have families. They have to consider their families as well. Do I really want to move my family and uproot my family for a year? Because that's all I'm getting. And I might even be there the entire year. They may trade me if especially if it's not a very good team. They're looking to use you as a bargaining chip to say, hey, I want you to have a really good season up to the trade deadline, and I'm going to trade you for some chips for the future, whether it be prospects, or draft picks or whatever it may be, right? Um, but again, it's a dirty business, so we got to look at it from that perspective too, as far as the business side of it. He has to look out for himself too. At the end of the day, it's a personal side. He has to look out for himself. He has to look out for his family. He has a child on the way. And yes, he's made a lot of money across his entire career, but I don't think it's bad for him to ask for more, right? Especially when they're always dictating it based off the numbers. Because a lot of the times, that's why some of these guys ask for these monster contracts, because their numbers are ridiculously good. But when they're ridiculously bad or they're having down years, then that's when the business side could say, well, we're going to offer you less because it looks like you're in a down, you've had a few down years. You got to prove to us you're the guy that you used to be. I mean, but it's business, and I think they understand that from that side as well. But the business side can be a little dirty, But I mean, it is what it is, and I think that both the business, the team owner side of it, and the player side of it understand that. But time will tell where Rizzo's going to land. I hope that one day he retires in our uniform. Even if he doesn't play for us, he decides that when he wants to retire, he signs like a 1 day contract and retires with us. That would be fantastic. But if he doesn't, that's okay too. Um, but again, I want to just circle this back before I end it. Is as we start getting into the MLB season, I'm not asking anybody to not buy whatever team's merchandise they have. I'm just asking you as a fan to please don't be one of those fans that feel like you have to be loyal, because if you're not loyal, that's not your favorite team. You can have a favorite team and still be critical of them. You can still have a favorite team and still say, I want more. I expect more for my dollar, right? There's nothing wrong with that. If you go to McDonald's and they said the cheeseburger's $3, they give you half of a cheeseburger and be like, here's half of the cheeseburger, it's $3. So where's my other half of the cheeseburger? No, 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 no. This is what we're offering now. We're offering you half of a cheeseburger for $3. But since you're so loyal to McDonald's and you love our brand, here's an experience. There you go. Shove it in your face. You're not going to be okay with that. And you're like, well, that's two different things. We're talking about we're talking about sports and a restaurant or a franchise. But why not? It's still your dollar. You're still paying money for it. So why can't you demand more? Right? Something that my son taught me recently, which was a word which I'd never heard before, is called shrinkflation. He opens a bag of chips. Chip is mostly air. It's not even a half of a bag of chips. You're still paying the same amount of money. Think about that. When these teams are selling you a half a bag of chips, are you going to pay for a half a bag of chips, or do you want a full bag of chips? Think about that one. I'm going to leave you guys with that one.